Awesome. Well, good morning, everybody. Uh, my name is Matt Bartholomew, and you are here on the webinar for the deer fencing webinar. So we'll be focused really on our partners at the DNR are going to be covering a lot of topics as it relates to mitigation of crop loss from wildlife. But one of our focuses with our field day is going to be webinar, or I'm sorry, is going to be deer fencing. But yeah, welcome everybody. So my name is Matt. I'm with Go Farm Connect. I didn't put up a screen with my picture on it, but Go Farm Connect, if you don't know, is a really awesome initiative that's put on through Renewing the Countryside, where we help farmers get connected with resources, with experts. It's a cooperative partnership with the USDA, with the Farm Service Agency, with Natural Resource and Conservation Services. And it's a really great group of all kinds of farmers from different cultural and geographic communities who are helping farmers who often don't know, it's tough to navigate all this stuff, even if you've been farming for a while. But we help to connect folks with resources, with just different support, with farm business management, which one of our staff on this call, Eric, is a part of, and just all kinds of resources to help you get to the next step and help you advance your farming journey. Like I said, this webinar is about, let's see here. It is about these guys. Well, and a lot of other types of predation that might be on your land. But we're really going to focus a lot of the content that is on deer. Well, no matter what's getting into your fields, they're beautiful. They're our neighbors, but they're also causes some issues. It might, get into your revenue. It might just kind of mess up your growing operations. So I'm really excited that we are partnering with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. You're going to meet Brandon in a little bit. And you're going to also meet the farmer that we're working with, Jane Winsberger and Matt Hardy, down the road as we introduce the stuff that they're going to be talking about. But I really appreciate everybody being a part of this, being on this. We do a lot of different field days and webinars. We've got a lot more coming up that I'll talk about a little bit later. But we're just going to kind of get into this because we're really grateful for this partnership with the Minnesota Department of Resources. There's all kinds of agencies and organizations and people working to try to make all this stuff work. And Brandon and Franklin, they'll introduce themselves, have just been fantastic partners in this. And so, yeah, Brandon, I don't know if you want to kick it off, introduce yourself, and I will
Yeah,
unshare.
perfect. Yeah, I can share my screen quick here.
And by the way, I just want to say that we are if you want to drop your name and your where you're from and why you joined this call, please do in the chat. And any questions you have, please do ask them in the chat. We won't do questions live as like I think our presentation is just going to keep going forward, but we have some folks that are going to be paying attention to what's going on in the chat, and we can address that in live time. But we definitely will have some time at the very end for questions and answers. All right. With that
Nice.
said, Brandon, go for it, man.
All right, so I've shared my screen. Hopefully that is the presentation side you're seeing, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Sweet. Okay, so yeah, like Matt said, my name is Brandon Kaiser. I work with the Minnesota DNR Wildlife Damage Program, along with my coworker Franklin Whitaker, who is also on the call here. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about the wildlife damage program and some ways the program can be used to help with your human wildlife conflicts. And so, um, while the program does aim to help with a lot of conflicts of various species across the state, today we'll primarily focus on deer conflict and deer fencing. So the wildlife damage program primarily exists to help ag producers and arguably really anybody experiencing human wildlife conflict by providing technical guidance on how to reduce this, and mitigate the damage to an individual's tolerance level. And so, kind of the main ways that we work to tackle these issues are through the use of non-lethal hazing, um, constructing barriers, and then sometimes out of season removal permits. And so while all these should be used in combination, depending on the situation for your best results, population management really is kind of the ultimate and most important factor. So you can, use non-lethal hazing, you can put barriers and fences up, but ultimately, if you don't work to control the localized population, they're not going to be near as effective. Um, so first, we'll get into what non-lethal hazing is. So this is kind of your first line of defense when you start having wildlife conflict. This really covers a variety of tools that are aimed at making wildlife uncomfortable. So you have wildlife coming into maybe your garden and they're getting used to, hey, this is a place to get a good, snack. There's no issues here. There's no predators. And they start getting comfortable. And that's kind of where the problem exists or starts. And so the goal is to really haze wildlife to make them feel uncomfortable, feel some shred of possibility of danger by exploiting senses using noise, movement, reflectance, and predator response, all kinds of things. When using these tools, it's really important to use a variety of them. So you don't just want to put up one tool and just set it and forget it. Typically, animals will get used to it and habituate fairly quickly. And so that's not really going to work really well when trying to haze animals. When using these tools, it's really important to use it early and often. So again, when you think about an animal getting used to or comfortable in a location, if they show up and are snacking on your lettuce for a couple of days, you might be able to get them to move on with some fairly easy hazing techniques. But if they're left to, reap the benefits of your garden for a couple of months, it might be much harder to get them to move. Um, so there are a few statutes that exist in the state that give landowners the ability to do some non-lethal hazing for a variety of species, including game birds that are causing damage, deer and elk when they're causing ag damage, specifically, and then bears, which are also causing damage. And I definitely would urge you to look these up and possibly even call a CO before enacting these, just to make sure you're on the same page about what is and is not legally allowed. So when we think of non-lethal hazing tools, there is a vast diversity in these types of tools, and almost all of them are readily available to just the random landowner. You don't have to have anything specific to buy them. So the ones that are shown here operate more on the use of noise. So we're looking at pyrotechnics like screamers and bangers, propane cannons that go boom, and other type of devices that operate with loud noises. There's also the use of reflectant or movement, which is maybe the wacky inflatable guy you see at a car dealership, or some reflectant tape, sprinklers, scary eye balloons. These are kind of operate a little more using movement and kind of keeping animals on their toes, but not really sure what's going on. Um, Other things you can use are predator decoys, trained dogs, promoting perching areas. I know in some places that have like cherry and berry orchards, they have a lot of issues with songbirds. And so there's been a lot of science that has kind of shown and supported the use of putting predator perches near these areas. And when raptors come in, like hawks, they come in and hang out, and then the songbirds no longer want to be there. And so there's kind of these ways to really naturally help thwart off your damage conflict culprit. Um, so, however, all of these are non-lethal hazing, as the name suggests. And so, without a lethal component, wildlife often habituate or get used to these tools. And so, again, it is super important that if you're going to spend your money and time on these tools, to make sure to utilize a variety of them, combine a couple of them, and switch up the locations. So if you put a propane cannon out in the corner of a field, if you just leave it in the same spot after probably a few days, wildlife's going to get pretty used to it. But if you can move the location, maybe even have it go off at different intervals, things like that to kind of keep wildlife guessing. And again, all these things are truly available for a person to buy on their own. So some of the downfalls, like I had said, is that these tools are effective most when you use them early and often. As wildlife have longer to utilize the conflict, they are much harder to get to move and change their behavior. And so this kind of little graph depicts really that as time goes, we lose not only the number of options we have, but also the effectiveness of those options. And so although non-lethal options seemingly are kind of easy to do, they do take a lot of effort. I mean, because you gotta, every time you have conflict occurring, so deer are going to be in your garden at various times. If you're only willing to get up at 8 in the morning, when it's time for you to start your day, and that's when you harass the deer, well, they're there 24/7. So you kind of got to be on top of it, or it's not going to be successful. We've heard from landowners of, and I'm sure a lot of people can attest to this, of deer getting used to like when you feed your cattle. They know, you know, every day at this time you're coming with feed. And so they get used to your patterns. And so if you consistently have a pattern of hazing them, they're going to know like, the jig is up and it's really not that scary to them. Um, so after non-lethal hazing, another kind of thing our program works with is providing materials for barriers. But it's really important to know the difference in types of barriers. So these barriers right here, a couple of examples: energized fence, some plastic fencing. So these are typically considered psychological barriers, and so these are considered barriers that can be learned, basically. So an animal can figure out, hey, with enough effort, I can either jump this, or I can go through this, or I can break this, or chew it. Effectively, until an animal figures it out, it might work. It might work a couple weeks. It might work a couple years. But ultimately, it has a flaw that can be exploited. And so typically, a lot of people use these because they are on the cheaper scale. They are much easier to put in. They're temporary. You can move them. You could take them down for winter. But again, they do have flaws. They often can be more effective if you use them prior to having conflict. So if you were to put plastic fencing up around your garden before deer exploit it, it might be a lot more effective. Once deer have been there and then you decide to put a fence around it, again, they can figure out how to get through it. And so timing is kind of everything with the effectiveness of these barriers. Conversely, the thing that our program pushes kind of the most is long-term physical barriers. And so obviously these are going to be something that's a little more heavy duty. And typically they also are much more expensive and permanent. And so they don't work for everybody's situation, and they can take a lot more effort and cost a lot more, but typically these are going to be your long-term, like true solutions. Um, Typically, woven wire fence 10 feet is what we provide materials for across the state, but there's also heavy duty panels that are fairly movable, but they're for certain situations where maybe you have less of a static footprint that you operate under. They can be another kind of alternative. So as I mentioned, our kind of big thing we push materials for is the 10-foot woven wire fencing, which is a long-term barrier recommended by the state. So this fence type, which is we'll talk quite a bit about, provides kind of the best bang for your buck. So oftentimes we see people get the cost of their fence is somewhere around $5 per linear foot, which maybe doesn't mean much, but that's at least a kind of a good proxy to keep in mind of, when figuring out, how much it costs to use maybe alternative materials or barriers. Um, if it's constructed correctly and maintained, these fences can last 20 to 30 years or more, and they provide consistent protection from deer 24/7, assuming you leave your gates closed. However, when planning a permanent solution, there are important factors to consider which can dramatically impact the cost of the fence. And ultimately, the cost is usually what causes people to dismiss fencing altogether. So one of them is topography. So ultimately, you don't really have much choice when it comes to topography on your land. There are some ways you can do some mitigation to maybe level some of the hills or farm certain chunks that are more flat. But at the end of the day, topography or rolling hills can really increase the cost of your fence because it requires extra structure in order to properly stretch the fence. And so, kind of looking at this fence is an example of you can see the rolling hills, and we effectively what goes up must come down. So typically, extra structure needs to be placed at the top of every hill peak and at the bottom, and that way we can stretch. So you can see from this example, we would be stretching from A to B, and then B to C, and C to D, and so on. And so by having those anchor points, each one of those anchor points costs anywhere from
Sisi
150 to
nikauliza hakuna mtu alijibu.
costs anywhere from 150 to almost $230. And so it doesn't take much for that to really start to exaggerate the cost of your fence. And so a section like this you can see is basically about $1,000 to put that structure in. The exact same length would require about $280 if it was flat and a gradual slope. And so those are ways that people can certainly manipulate the landscape a little bit to get more cost-effective fence if it makes sense for your situation. Um, However, something to keep in mind is that if you do manipulate your ground, keep in mind how that may impact your operation as far as drainage. Sometimes the rolling hills, if you flatten things out, you don't want to turn your garden or operation into a bowl that is going to hold water. So those are types of things to just keep in mind if you do consider doing dirt work. Another thing that really drives the cost of these fences up is similar to the up and down. Every time you turn or change direction, you have to put another structure piece in, which dramatically drive up that price as well. And so this is kind of an example of two very similar sections of what would be a fence. The one on the left is obviously kind of the bog standard, pretty simple, what the ideal situation would be. The one on the right would be somebody maybe wanting to go around a chunk of woods or something in particular. But by adding this change of direction, and you actually decrease slightly the amount of area you're fencing, but also you're adding twice as much structure. And so what ends up being again, with looking at those H brace anchor structures, you end up doubling the cost of what you would have put into it. And so sometimes it's a conversation we have with landowners about what's important to them. If money is a big deal, then there are certain economical choices that can be made to, kind of maximize you getting the best bang for your buck. And last, the third one we kind of deal with quite a bit is people often have visions of gates in various locations for convenience sake. Totally makes sense, and understand that in the perfect world, you would like to have, a gate on the back side of your fence as well as the front and, stuff like that. But oftentimes it dramatically increases the cost of fencing because every gate needs structure on both sides of it. And then the gate panels themselves are also not incredibly cheap. And so, when you look at this top example, you need two H braces on this length. But as soon as you put a gate in there, now you need two more structures plus the gate panels. And so it's not uncommon for us to see, an $8,000 fence, $2,000 of it are just in materials to accommodate extra gates. And so, if you're looking to try to on a budget, that may be something that pushes your fence over the top where maybe it doesn't seem feasible anymore. So always keep in mind that gates can be added later down the line with a little bit of cost and work, especially maybe once the fence helps you, save and not lose as much to deer damage. You can recuperate that money and kind of reinvest it back into the way you want the fence to be ultimately. Always keep in mind with these fences, the primary goal is to protect your crops right now. So, keeping that in the forefront, I think, helps people. So with all of those doom and gloom of what causes fence to get expensive, here's kind of a real world example of a person that we worked with who had a dream for how they wanted their fence to go, but it was a significant cost difference when we actually started factoring in all of those kind of little intricate details. So in this example, this is a chunk of land a person was farming. You can see that on the left side, there are two gates on the back of the fence, as well as one in the front on the right side. The landowner also had topography, pretty good rolling hills on the north and south side, as well as on the southeast corner. There was this little jog that really wasn't being farmed, But the landowner wanted to include it, and so by doing that, it requires, two extra turns. Um, and so just those are all little things that kind of start jacking up the price. And so when we talked to this landowner and kind of came up with, hey, here's an alternative option. Um, oh, sorry. This was so yeah, this is about a 5.5 acre fence or operation, I guess, that was going to cost just south of $14,000. So when we talked to them and came up with more of a different option, this is what we came up with, and it's much, much more simple. The landowner was able and willing to do a little bit of dirt work and flatten out the topography on the north and south sides. And so we didn't need to put structure every 200 feet to accommodate for that. And so by doing having the topography taken care of, we got rid of that little jog on the southeast, which I believe less than zero point 0.2 acres was that's how much land they lost that was farmable. And then having a gate in the corner on the northeast corner, just one gate. And so what we were able to do is you barely decrease the amount of acreage you can farm, and now it is less than $10,000. And so when you factor in the DNR's ability to contribute up to $5,000 towards this person was now paying less than half of that cost of the fence. And it ended up being something they were willing and able to do. And so that's something that I think is really important when we have these conversations with landowners, is really kind of, it's good for you to have a goal and a dream of what you want, but being able and willing to be flexible on these can go a long way to really making sure that you can get what you need to be protected. And the last thing that I brought up that our program kind of works with is out of season removal permits, depending on the situation. So oftentimes these are used for large row crops where fencing isn't feasible. So if you have a 160 acre field corn field, we might not really expect that a person can really fence that. And so that's where out of season permits would be potentially in play. So these removal permits are also an option for folks that are waiting for materials for fencing. So if you are on our list and we're in the process of getting you materials, we realize, a permanent structure fence takes time to order the materials, come up with the plan for you to actually put the materials in the ground. And so in that meantime, you could be eligible for these permits to help you while you're experiencing damage now. So the program also has, there's also another program, I guess, that works to give people extra antlerless tags during the season, like actual deer season. And so that helps with localized deer populations that maybe are kind of out of control on a small scale. And so what that does is it would give, you would go and buy basically a deer tag, and you would have a list of people that would be eligible to get more antlerless tags during the season. And so it takes a lot of work, and you definitely have to recruit some people willing to take a bunch of deer. But it is ways that you can kind of help with that heavy or apply heavier hunting pressure to your localized kind of population. So these are really great tools that can take a lot of effort, including the recruiting hunters or hunting yourself, having hunters available at the time you need them, as well as uh, figuring out disposition plans for each deer. And so what that means is that every deer that is removed, either it's during or with those permits or with extra tags in season, the meat has to go somewhere predetermined to make sure that nothing's wasted. And so if you were to get removal permits before we would even authorize a permit, you would have to have a quote unquote home for every deer that you would shoot before you shoot it. And that way there's already kind of an assigned path for where that's going to go. So that's really important. Another part of this that's important to consider is cities and municipalities might have ordinances that restrict like the use of firearms or even bow hunting or hunting of any kind. And so unfortunately, the DNR has absolutely no control over that. And once, because the DNR provides you the opportunity to manage deer populations through hunting. So as soon as a city or local government unit decides that they're not going to allow hunting or the use of firearms, then they're no longer allowing the tool the DNR offers for managing population. So then it becomes the city's responsibility to do something about it. And I know it's not always the greatest answer, but ultimately, once that happens, then you have to work with your city on, hey, we've got a deer issue, and the city might have to do some type of contract calling or something. But that oftentimes is something we run into with folks that live near the metro. An important note, I guess, with the removal permits and extra in-season tags is that venison donation is possible as the disposition or plan for the meat for the in-season DDAPs or the deer depredation deer antlerless permits, but not for out-of-season removal. So the out-of-season removal it would either have to go to a person looking to utilize the deer, or it would have to go to some place like a zoo or a big cat rescue, some place where it can't get donated to human consumption, basically. And that's, I think, just gets into some red tape stuff. Okay, so whole lot about the program, probably a lot of information that just like drinking from a garden hose. So let's get back to probably what's most important to a lot of people on this call, which is who qualifies for that assistance. And so if you are if you are a commercial grower, and what that means is that you sell your egg product and you sell at least $1,000 or more annually. And so it's a fairly low bar to hit, but that would put you in the category of a commercial grower. Um, and so if you qualify as a commercial grower, you qualify for our program. And these, let's see. If you do not qualify, you can still get technical guidance. So we can still provide you with some information on how to help with your damage issues, but we just won't be able to provide you things like materials. And so to get materials or the removal permits, you must have damage verified by the DNR, and be willing to sign what we call a cooperative damage management agreement. And that's an agreement between the state and you on a wildlife management plan, including expectations for hunting if possible. And so kind of just, I guess, a little more simplified graph of this is that anybody can get technical guidance and really anybody can get removal permits. It's to get materials or any type of financial help from us that you would have to be considered a commercial grower. And so that would be your kind of your biggest thing to make sure that you qualify for that before kind of trying to get in and work with the program. These For materials, there are set allotments that have been dictated by those statutes that we operate under. And that dictates how much value we can provide in materials. And depending on the resource that is being damaged, and so if you're a specialty grower, let's say you have a CSA garden, you can qualify for up to $5,000 in assistance. It's important to know that this is a one-time assistance. And so the materials and the allotments and stuff, they follow you as a person, but also the parcel. And so that is something that kind of gets a little hairy in some situations with the way that land is divvied up. But we can help you or your parcel one time. And so if you were to, let's say, move to a different parcel and want help, we've already helped you. If you sell your parcel and somebody moves into your parcel and wants help, we've already helped that parcel. And so it's kind of just things that were included by higher up people than myself. And so these are those allotments I was mentioning. And so 5,000 for specialty crops, 3,000 if you have stored forage for let's say cattle, and that's grain included stored forage such as silage, and $1,500 if you have like a non-grain product such as hay or alfalfa. And so another thing that's really important with our program is that we do not reimburse. And so if you go out and buy materials for fencing, we can't reimburse you for it. Everything that we provide has to be purchased through the state, and then we facilitate getting you those materials. All right, so if you want to kind of work through the process of our program, who are you going to call for that? So to start the process for materials or removal permits, the first thing you want to do is you want to call your local area wildlife office. I don't expect you to read this map on here, but this is a map that's readily available on our DNR website. You can even just Google DNR wildlife offices, and it'll pop up. And then just find where your plot of land is that is experiencing damage, and call the area manager associated with that plot. Um, if you're looking for technical guidance, you would do the same thing. You can also call us at the damage program. We can certainly that typically we would get forwarded your information anyways. But if you want to sign up for the program, the way that kind of the roundabout way to get signed up is you have to go through your area manager first. And then once you do all those steps of getting damage verified, signing the agreement, then they kind of push your information to us, and then the damage program works with you from then. So I guess kind of a fairly rough overview of the process for getting materials and eventually getting a fence. So like I said, you would start off by calling your local area wildlife office. They're going to schedule a site visit to come out and verify damage. And they're typically going to talk to you at your property about, hey, ways that you can maybe be helping yourself before anything else like a fence gets put in. So this may be asking you about your hunting practices, or are you allowing hunting? How many deer are being taken off your land? It may be if let's say you have a cattle operation and you've got spilled grain everywhere. Well, they might suggest that, hey, maybe cleaning up some of this spillage and stuff would go a long way to not having wildlife kind of just hanging out all the time with this easily, readily available food. But either way, so they would come out, verify damage, talk to you a little bit about your situation, have you sign that agreement. And so once you sign that agreement, like I said, your information comes to us, and we put you on our fencing list. And so typically we are able to get a hold of you fairly quick. Make sure that when you fill that CDMA out, that you are giving an active email address and phone number. I can't tell you how many times we get people's information and the phone number goes right to a this is not a working number. If I don't have a way to get a hold of you, I can't do a whole lot. So, but yeah, once you come to us and you're on our fencing list, we will set up a time to come out and do a site visit to evaluate what type of fence you would need and measure out a fence for you. And so we've done this in a way where typically people have a plan. This is what I want to do. And like I said, with some of the things to keep in mind, we will listen to that plan, but we'll kind of give some advice on here's some things that you can do to make this a little cheaper or more convenient, or why are you avoiding this chunk when it would be easier to include the whole property? Just kind of giving a little different perspective on ways to do the fencing differently. So once we come up with a fence design, we put it in a template that we have here at the office, and it plugs out all the information with how much material you would need for the fence. Um, and so I usually push that out to folks, and it's got a pretty close cost estimate. I push that to folks, and landowners just kind of check it over and make sure, like, hey, this is going to work, or yeah, man, this is expensive. Maybe we cut back on a couple of gates, stuff like that. But once you as a landowner decide, hey, this is the option two, we're going to go with that. Then I go through the process of procuring bids and getting exact costs of what the fence will cost with freight and all kinds of stuff like that. And once we're all good to go, I put orders together, and I'll let you know when it's time for you to call the vendors and set up delivery. Your posts and wire typically get delivered by the vendors. The rest of the small hardware and kind of smaller fence materials, we typically will just either send in the mail from here in Brainerd. Otherwise, we're around the state all over the kind of all the time. So sometimes we just drop stuff off when we can. But we'll get all the materials to you. And so once all the materials are in your hands, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to want to put your posts in the ground. And so we'll talk a little bit about kind of this project at Jane's place where we were working with putting the posts in the ground. It's ideally you want to have your posts in the ground for about 2 weeks. And this just kind of lets your posts settle a little bit and make sure that they are truly in the ground, really good and sturdy. Think about your posts as the foundation of your house. If you kind of get lazy and skimp on that, everything is built on that. And so you want to make sure it's super important your posts go in the ground correctly, straight, and are tamped in the ground super well and kind of packed in there really well. Because if those are done well, everything else is kind of gravy. So, and then finally, after the posts are in the ground, we can either borrow you specialty tools to help stretch the wire and kind of finish the fence. Or we can schedule like 2 days to come out and show you how to use those tools and then kind of assist on putting the fence wire up. Um, it is super important to know that at this stage, we are not supposed to be building your fence. This is definitely supposed to be more of a technical guidance of how to do it. And so we do require that you have like 3 to 4 able-bodied people at these installs. And so it's just really important to know that like we are there to help, but we've definitely showed up at places before where we are the only 2 people. And it's kind of frustrating because I do think that you get more buy-in, and I think people maintain the fences a lot more when their sweat and tears went into putting them into the ground. So we just seem to get a lot better results from that. Okay, so yeah, so the last thing I wanted to talk about was the wildlife management that I mentioned in the beginning. So although there's tools like hazing and barriers that can be used to help with your damage issues, again, the long-term damage management really takes a long-term plan. And so without a long-term plan and sticking to it, you're always going to be battling damage. So you can put a 10-foot fence up, you're still always going to have this pressure. Maybe you leave the gate open one time, deer are going to get in there. It's this constant use of hunting to not only help keep your population curbed, localized, but also without the presence of hunting, animals get really comfortable being around human, dominated spaces. And so if you never deer hunt, your property is going to be a safe haven for deer, and they're never really going to have a problem with people. And so that's where you hear stories of people having deer walk right up to them because they have no fear. They really have no reason to fear you because you've never really shown a reason. And so it's super important to always have some form of hunting implemented on a lot of these lands. Um, Otherwise, you're really just, I mean, kind of just you're bailing water out of a boat that's got a hole in it. You're not fixing the issue. So like I said, hunting is really the number one tool that's out there for managing wildlife populations. It's the way that the DNR uses to manage populations across the state. Without that, populations are left unchecked, but also wildlife becomes brave and very comfortable at your place. There are 3.5 months of various deer seasons available every single year. There are ways to recruit hunters to take antlerless deer. It can be a really huge way to help curb this. There's youth seasons, there's youth antlerless permits. There are, like I said, various seasons. So there are ways to kind of help yourself with some of this hunting need. Another thing you can do is manage your habitat. So I know this isn't always the easiest thing, especially for farmers. You're farmers, you're not wildlife habitat folks. But some of these things can go a long way in helping curb your damage issues. So improving or maintaining your wooded areas so that they're maybe they provide more food. Whether it's cleaning them up so they're not just thick, kind of hard to get in areas. Cleaning them up so wildlife can utilize them. It might help keep wildlife more in those wooded areas and less likely to come out and exploit your crop. Provides food and cover. Uh, Planting decoy crops, again, not super easy for folks maybe, but when it works or when you have the ability to do that, planting a lesser crop maybe farther away from your cash crop can help deter wildlife from coming into maybe your cash crop and just kind of keep them over in a different area. It usually works better on larger scale stuff. Um, and another thing is, and we see this sometimes when we go to people's properties, whoops, is the having a lot of their cash crops growing right next to water sources. And so if you have maybe a wetland on your property, growing all of your vegetables and stuff right next to a wetland, well, you're kind of creating this beautiful location for deer. They've got a safe place where there's no predators. They've got food. They've got water. I mean, you're kind of just making a beautiful resort for them. And so ways to kind of mitigate that if you have the ability to maybe plant your stuff a little farther away from like a wetland or tall grass areas. And then the last thing, and we see this at quite a few places, is maybe figuring out where you want dump spots to be if you have maybe whether it's compost piles or just spoiled stuff, where you would put these. So oftentimes we see people have dump spots of damaged or rotten vegetables, and they just throw them into the woods a little bit, not too far away from their operation. And those are just going to be attractants for wildlife. So you might not see them, but the deer are going to be hanging out, exploiting that. And the more you do that, the more they're getting accustomed to this is a place where I come get fed. And all of a sudden, they might start venturing into the stuff that's not, spoiled yet. Another good example of that is folks with like apple trees, letting the apple tree or apples that fall on the ground just stay on the ground. Again, you're inviting wildlife to come over and eat this buffet. And so those are just kind of little ways that you can kind of help curb this. Other things that kind of stand out are when we see piles of debris or like a fallen building. These are types of things that attract rodents. Rodents attract bigger animals, and bigger animals tend to cause issues such as badgers, digging holes in maybe your garden. Oftentimes they're attracted to something that could be mitigated, and it's not actually the badger that's the problem. And so all of these are things that should be, at least considered when thinking about how to, successfully grow your stuff without having to deal with the conflicts that can come from them. So in conclusion, ultimately, all of this really comes down to the concept of integrated pest management. And what this really is it's a combination of tools that are all interconnected to holistically reduce conflict. And so it can be used in a variety of ways with hazing, population management, barriers, pest control. Sometimes like I just brought up with the rodents and larger mammals is you don't even realize necessarily kind of the domino effect of one thing. And so I know in some of the work that I've done previously, in certain crops, you might have insect issues, and we know that that would cause damage to your crop and maybe cause disease. But then that might draw in birds as well. And so now you have birds coming in to feed on the insects, and they're causing damage to your crop as well, which causes more disease. Plus, now they're pooping, right? So now we have feces. So now there's health concerns, and all of this stems from just not controlling the insects. And so I realize this is a very kind of simplified version of that, but again, understanding kind of that connectivity of all these things and how controlling one pest can really have, dynamic effects later down the road. And with that, hopefully I didn't go crazy with time, but our kind of goal with our program is really a twofold. It's we're looking to decrease human wildlife conflict, and also increase social tolerance. And those, I think, when we tackle those two things, I think we can make pretty good headway on wildlife conflict as a whole. So thanks for your time.
Cool. Thank you so much, Brandon. If anybody has questions, we're going to have a little bit of a longer form question sort of session at the end. If you have questions right now, pop them in the chat. It'd be great to hear from you. So next, we have got a couple more things. Yeah, Brandon, that was awesome, man. It's been really great. As y'all can tell, Brandon and Franklin's on this call are just a wealth of knowledge and are really there to help. And so after this call, if you want to reach out, if you want to follow up with more detailed questions, if you want to think about putting in some deer fencing or some other solutions to trying to mitigate some of that pressure from animals or whatever on your farm, like they're just really great to talk with. So the next section we have is we're gonna check in with Jane, our farmer who just got some deer fencing. It was really cool when we were trying to think about this project and like because this is really important. We really haven't done with Go Farm Connect a webinar or a field day on this, and it impacts so many farmers. And so it was really cool. We were trying to think about, all right, who has deer fencing? Who wants to get it? And the timing worked out great that Jane was able to do that. And Jane, before you talk, I just want to also say we're going to go through what we did on Jane's farm, some of the tips and tricks that we learned, and just some things to consider if and when you do get some deer fencing. And then also Matt Hardy, who's on this call as well, is going to be talking about some of the intersections with livestock fencing and deer fencing for to keeping the livestock in and the animals you don't want out. So Jane, would you mind? It's great to have you on the call. Would you mind just sharing for about maybe 2 minutes, just a little bit about yourself and maybe how you came into this?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jane Winsperger. I'm one of the farmers and one of the Minnesota African Immigrant Farmers Association leader. I have a farm called TDEF. TDEF stands for My Five Children. Now it's located at Mora. Township. I have 30 acres right now. But when I started having the fence application and talking to Brandon, it has been a while. And as Brandon has shared, for sure they work with farmers. They work with you. Even when you don't know how to apply, you will call them and they will walk you through. So me talking about my farm practice is that I started with Ogilvy, where I had deers come, because where I was, there was no farmers around. It was all houses and places and stores. So I was the only farmer there. So the deers came and ate everything. So I asked Moses, who is the farm connector, what can I do? And Moses said, call DNR. Let them come and see, take pictures and let them come and see the damage. So I called them, they came, they looked at it, then we started the process, the application process. For sure it takes a while, because I understood that I'm not the only one who does that. There are so many people who have the same problem like me, so many farmers who have crop damage. So when they walked me through, I kept on calling Brandon. I know I frequent calling him all the time. So they came out with Frank, and eventually they gave me a fence. But as Eric is saying, it depends on where you are fencing and how much you're gonna fence. So the fencing I was given was for Ogilvy, but I told Brandon I've bought a new farm, and then he came there. They came there with Frank, and they looked around and they measured the materials, because they have to go with the place where we want a farm. So to cut, I know we don't have much time. To cut the story short is, they came there on Tuesday. I was in Washington, D.C., lobbying with the Minnesota Farmers Union, which was very crucial. I met, or you can tell, I met Senator Kabocha, Tina Smith. I met so many representatives here and there, and they were able to listen to us, farmers, what we are going through. So, but Eric came up and owned the place. Matt, thank you so much. You came up and you stood for me. So when they were fencing, I wasn't there, but the impact the farmers around there got from them, like they worked as a teamwork. Brandon and Frank, they were measuring. Eric was over here and there, bringing the posts here and there, and giving. Matt was just leading. Everybody was just on track. My daughter was like, "Mom, you missed. That is my place. Thank you, Eric. that is You missed the game. It was so fun for them being out here. So farmers, sometimes there are resources out there. That is me. That is what they did on that Monday, on 7th. So there is resources out there for us. And we need to reach them. We need to talk to them. Yes, it will take a while. Eventually, they will give you. So me, I'm the proudest farmer who has benefited from this deer fencing. Even though still my plants are being eaten, not done yet, but I'm hoping to finish on 23rd this month. I'm inviting you for the field day. It's coming to my place. I want all of you to show up. I have African food. I have all kinds of food you come and test. Thank you so much for giving me this chance. And thank you, Brandon and Matt and Eric, for what you are doing, helping farmers to farm.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Jane. Thanks for being a farmer. Thanks for all you do. And thank you for sharing all that. Really important context. Jane covered a lot of stuff that was important for us to understand. This next section we're going to talk about. I know we don't have that much time, but I just want to share a little bit. Brandon, I know we were going to talk, but I don't know if there's anything really quick you just want to say about this, just in like 30 seconds, or if I got I've got the diagram of her farm on here.
Yeah, that's just basically what you can expect. So if we come out and do a site visit, that's the type of kind of schematic we would give you paired with a list of materials. And so, yep, that's basically it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, bud. So yeah, like Jane said, we went out on Monday. It was awesome. And so I just want to share a little bit about the process. Going to keep this short because I know we're coming up on the time. But it was just so great to have them out. Eric came out. There's Eric right there, making some room so we can start digging those fence posts. But um, yeah, we got it. We ended up getting or Jane ordered a ditch witch, which worked really well. And we dug some holes. We did a lot of the fence posting. We set the fence posts in. Like Brandon said, it's good to get like 2 weeks out if possible, so that the ground can settle. It's good to have a team of people there. This is a real great opportunity to build community. Maybe you just moved to a chunk of land. Maybe whatever the case is, there are people that love to help. There's people that love to be a part of this. And I think these big infrastructure projects, you don't have to think about it like, oh man, this is going to be so tough. I have to do this all on my own. Well, first of all, you've got some resources with Brian and Franklin, but they can't build the whole thing for you. But there's community all around. I really think this is an opportunity to build that. But some things that we just kind of took away from this to think about when you're planning for this is what kind of tools do you want? So there was a ditch witch that was rented. Make sure that if you're going to get a ditch witch or something, whatever you're renting, make sure you have a crew that you can get it done during that time. Because every additional day you rent whatever piece of equipment, it's going to cost more. So just have a plan set up for that. They brought out some really great tampers, as you can see in the crescent or the moon, the half moon shaped one. It's really important, like you saw back here. You're tamping. You got to get those down. You can put a bunch of soil in there and then just tamp the top, but that's not good. You got to tamp all the way through to really secure those posts. And so that's a time issue. There's other things that we're going to learn about at the field day that Jane mentioned on the 23rd, like what sort of other equipment do you need to do the tensioning of the fencing? Because it's a really big, heavy spool, and you need to have equipment to be able to hold that up. You can see that skid steer below is a good example of the kind of equipment you need. The time is a really important thing. Like I said, do some planning. Call your utilities in advance because you want to dig before, or you want to call before you dig. And then make sure that those posts that whatever the timeline you have in your mind, make sure you have plenty of time for the post to set. And like I said, people, it's so important to have people there. You can get it done faster. It can be fun. You get food involved. It's so much fun. Um, yeah, so I don't know. Let's see. So really quick, well, Matt, do you want to speak really quick to some intersections um, with the livestock fencing?
Sure, just in 1 minute so we
Yeah.
don't go over time too far. Bottom line is having built a bunch of livestock perimeter fence in the past, and then being a part of this deer fencing project on Monday. Um, like someone alluded to a minute ago, livestock is all about keeping your animals in, and the deer fencing is all about keeping the deer out. But the principles and the physics and even the construction of how you put all these tinker toys together is basically identical. The posts might be longer, the hole might be deeper, but the system for putting it all together and um, lining everything up is the same. So if you have a desire to put up livestock fence at some point, you would benefit from this deer fencing field day, if only just to help see it in action and maybe experience what it's like to be on the tamping team. So those posts are in rock solid.
Cool. Thank you, Matt. And I've got some information. So yeah, so Tuesday is going to be our field day. We're going to be learning more about the program. So Brandon and Franklin will both be there to be able to answer more in-depth questions. See how that Jane's farm has been set up. I feel it's good to see this in action, what it looks like. Learn about the tensioning for fencing, and how to do it for long-lasting impact. Because you could do it in one way that's not going to last too long. But you can do another way that's going to last, like they said that Brandon said, 20 to 30 years of helping to keep the deer out. And then also Matt's going to be there talking about livestock fencing. You can learn more about the USDA programs that we work with USDA to help connect farmers with. Really awesome opportunities to help whatever your goals are for farming. Whether it's getting cost shares to get high tunnels, irrigation support, whether it's getting loans to buy a farm, to get some infrastructure. A lot of great tools are out there. And the folks that we work with, we're really grateful to work with, like know about these tools, and we can connect you with those. Also, there's going to be food, like Jane mentioned, so it's going to be really good. So there's a link to register, and I'll make sure to send it out with everybody when we do follow-ups. But yeah, I just wanted to have everybody, just all the awesome folks that were involved here, really thank you for being a part of this. I also want to like point out that Eric Highmark is on the call right here, and we can send out information if you need any. Eric, do you want to give a quick pitch for your farm business management?
Yeah, so if you're wondering, like how much am I losing to predator loss each year? How much could I save? What's the cost of this deer fence? Can I afford it? And you don't necessarily know offhand, let me know. I'd love to work with you, or one of my team members, Laura Cullup and Nura Ahmed, are also farm business management specialists, and we can help you kind of come up with what um, your budget would be, or what the costs of this fence would be, and that sort of thing. So I'll drop my email in the chat here. Feel free to reach out if you want some help with some of the financial aspects of getting these big expensive fences put in.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much, Eric. So now I'm just gonna put it up on that on this page. Here's the link to get to Go Farm Connect. If you're interested in connecting with any connectors that can help you beyond talking about fencing. Matt does livestock. We've got so many awesome veggie growers, folks that have live in different communities and have a lot of different experiences. So if you're interested in connecting with farmers who have a lot of tools, a lot of knowledge, and about all kinds of different stuff. Please do click on that. We'll be following up. But now I know it's over time, but I just want to open it up to some questions to see if anybody has any questions for anybody on this call. Maybe we could do 10 minutes, and we will make sure if you have to leave that we'll be continuing to record, and then we can share out these questions and everything with everybody else. Does anybody have any questions for Brandon or Matt or Jane? Gladys, you're unmuted. Did you do that to ask a question?
Yeah, I asked the question. You hear me?
Yeah, I can ask you. I can hear you.
Yeah, because maybe I came when you are already somewhere. I didn't understand. Is this fencing, do we pay, the farmers pay for it, or is it for free?
So I believe, okay, so with our program, it basically, if you qualify as a commercial grower, so you do sell your produce and you sell at least $1,000, then you can get up to, generally speaking, it's $5,000 towards the materials. And so anything over $5,000 would be at your expense, as well as the cost of installation and any rental stuff that you would need as well.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
Cool.
yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions as we start to wind down this webinar?
Brandon and Franklin, I have a lot of people that are beginning farming, and so they might be vegetable farming for a couple years, and then they might switch gears and do something else. Maybe it's livestock or something else. If they went ahead and got a deer fence, let's say for their vegetables, and then ended up realizing that there's more money in sheep or something like that, and they wanted to switch gears. Do they have to give that money back, or what? How does that work if they end up switching gears?
Nope. So the way the program works is we provide you the materials, and after that, we've basically satisfied the state's part of the agreement, and there's really no aftermath of making sure that you're continuing to farm or how you used it. Yeah, The big thing would be that if you don't build the fence correctly or use the materials appropriately, if you were to call back and say, "Hey, I've got, deer issues," we would say, "Well, you shouldn't, because you got stuff for a fence." That would be kind of the big thing.
Cool. Great question, Eric. Awesome. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, really grateful for your time and the work that you do, Brandon and Franklin. It's great to see these intersections and these partnerships between different agencies and different community groups. We need more of this kind of stuff. We need more opportunities to come together to learn, to share space, and to help each other as we move forward towards the kind of future that we all want to see. So I want to just also give one last plug to that deer fencing field day we're going to be doing. It's up in Mora. If anybody isn't familiar, it's about a little over an hour north of the cities, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, a little bit north of that from the cities. And it's a really beautiful farm that Jane has. And so it'll be a great opportunity just to really get your hands on this project so you understand firsthand how to make this work for your farm. If we're going to send this out, if you had any other farmers in your networks that you think would be interested in learning about this, please do pass this along. A lot of great resources from the DNR to Go Farm Connect to just this community that is assembled here that can help just make all this stuff happen. So, Brandon, thank you so much, man. Franklin, Matt, thanks for sharing. Jane, thanks for being a farmer. And thanks everybody here for showing up and caring about what you do and living your life with some more intentionality. All right, I'm going to end the recording and till the next time, y'all.